You see on the national news all the time that Portland is just a war zone and a wasteland, riddled with graffiti, trash, and homeless camps. Is the entire Portland and Vancouver region like this? Is it fair to assume that the whole Portland-Vancouver region is the same as the city of Portland? Well then, this could very well be the most informative video on this subject that you will ever watch. The Portland and Vancouver areas are situated in some of the most beautiful part of this country. The Pacific Northwest is the ultimate place to live if beauty and outdoor recreation is within your lifestyle. Nobody disagrees with that. And assuming that the entire Portland-Vancouver region is the same as the city of Portland is a mistake. So here are 10 reasons why I consider Vancouver to be the old Portland, like it was 20 years ago or so. This is Joseph Nelson with the Ascend Home team, and I make educational videos on moving to the Portland and Vancouver area with just a small smattering of self-promotion. I make videos for people who are looking to relocate here from all over the world. But you have to call or text me in order to start your own moving experience, or we will never connect. All of my contact information is listed below each video. And the phone number provided is my personal cell phone, and you may call that or text that 24/7. Okay, let's start with number 10, and I encourage you to listen to all of the reasons that I consider Vancouver to be the old Portland. I've lived here for over 60 years, and so I have this perspective. So number 10 is the climate. It's not too hot in the summer. It's not too cold in the winter. See some of my videos on the weather here for more specifics. My point is, it's not like Idaho where you're snowed in for months in the winter. Portland and Vancouver has very little snow, typically one very short 1 or 2 day event per year. And unlike the Sun Belt in the southwestern United States, which is a pretty popular place for people to relocate, in the summer it is hot. And outdoor recreation may just totally end up being off your radar screen because you can't stand to get away from air conditioning. Sure, the winters are nice and comfortable, but if you're going to live there year-round, outdoor recreation should be low on your list of priorities there. And unlike many parts of the South and the Southeast United States, we just recently had a huge, devastating tornado and lost upwards of 100 lives and just tragic destruction of property. We don't have tornadoes here. We really don't have natural disasters in this area. We have weather here influenced from both sides of us. We sit in a valley between the Pacific Ocean and the high desert. And you go 50 miles in either direction from Portland or Vancouver, and you can experience these extremes. The Coast Mountains to the west and the Pacific Ocean, and the Cascade Mountains to the east, and on the backside of the Cascade Mountains is the high desert. So our climate here tends to be kind of in the middle between these two extremes, and it's very mild and nice. And that brings us to number 9, the variety of climates that are available within a short drive. We are not as wet as it is to the west. There are rainforests to the west in the Coast Range and at the Pacific Ocean. And we are not as dry as they are to the east in the high desert. But with that easterly summer dry comes more severe cold and snow in the winter. Because the high desert gets its name not because it's at sea level, but because it's at 3,000 feet and above. They have hot, dry summers and cold, snowy winters. But there's no question you have a super diverse access to varied climates here throughout the year. In the summer, if you want cooler weather, you can go to the coast. In the winter, if you want winter sports, you're only an hour away from Mount Hood. If you wish a vacation in a more dry area in the summer, the high desert, an hour to an hour and a half away, could be an awesome place to spend with your family. We are in the middle of these two climate extremes, which I believe is the perfect climate for year-round living and recreation. Now, you may change your recreation in the summer versus the winter. In the summer, you may do more camping, hiking, sightseeing. In the winter, you may do more winter sports like skiing, snowboarding, snowmobiling. And this ties into reason number 8. You can find recreation here year-round, with only infrequent periods of inclement weather that might keep you down. People don't move here to escape COVID restrictions. No, both Oregon and Washington's COVID restrictions were fairly severe. People don't move here for conservative politics like they do in Texas. No, people move here for the beauty and the recreational lifestyle that is available here. People move here for the endless opportunities for recreation and beauty, and a comfortable climate with just a smattering of too hot or too cold weather. And people are amazed at how the views change as you go an hour in either direction. Number 7, Vancouver is superior. So let's talk about how different and awesome the Vancouver side of the river is. And I could make a case that the same applies to most of the Portland suburbs as well. But this video is about why Vancouver is the old Portland. You know, I grew up in Beaverton, and we considered Portland a safe place to be and live. I remember back in the 70s, the city was looking for a contractor to wash the tunnels, Highway 26 that leaves Portland and heads west into the suburbs. How far have we gone from that kind of care that existed? We got beyond picking up trash and covering up any graffiti. We got down to let's wash the tunnels. As teenagers, for fun, we just used to catch the bus, which we could catch out in Beaverton within a few blocks of our homes, and ride into downtown Portland and spend the day. And at that time, this was considered a safe activity, and our parents did not object to this. So my perspective on Portland is long and vast. I know what Portland was even just a few short years ago, but currently I would not recommend moving to Portland. But Vancouver reminds me of the way Portland used to be, setting the clock back 20 years or so. And I don't necessarily see that changing anytime soon. It's really kind of weird that Vancouver is not more like Portland, but the fact remains that it is not. Vancouver, even though situated right across the Columbia River from Portland, a 5-minute drive from Portland into Vancouver over the I-205 bridge, will show you just stark differences between the two communities. When people fly into Portland or drive to Portland, they're going to use one of the 2 primary interstate freeways. They're going to use Interstate 5, which goes right through downtown Portland, or Interstate 205, which parallels I-5, and they both run north and south through Portland, and you're going to see the worst that Portland has to offer. You're going to see non-stop graffiti on the barricades between the lanes of the freeway and on the overpasses and on signs that doesn't get covered up with paint or washed off. You're going to see homeless camps along the freeways with unbelievable amounts of garbage floating down from these homeless camps onto the freeway and blowing around. Honestly, it reminds me of a scene in Mexico. I hate the idea of anybody coming to Portland. And if you do, you're more than likely going to have to drive one of these 2 freeways. And you're going to see the worst that Portland has to offer. And quite frankly, I would not blame you if you said, I can't live here. But a short drive over the I-205 bridge into Vancouver, all of a sudden you see a stark contrast. From trash, graffiti, and homelessness to clean and a sense of pride and total cleanliness of the area. Portland is a homeless magnet. Vancouver is not. Okay, now we're down to reason number 6. Traffic in Vancouver is much lighter. The traffic in Vancouver reminds me of 20 years ago in Portland. The freeways have ample lanes, and the traffic generally moves faster than the posted speed. Hey, if you're enjoying the content of this video, do me a favor and hit the like button. Reason number 5. Vancouver had lower COVID restrictions than Portland. And you're going to say, well, what difference does that make? It'll probably never happen again. Well, I don't know that that's true. But what I do know is that we live right on the Columbia River between Oregon and Washington. And we went into Washington 9 times out of 10 for services and supplies rather than going into Portland. In Vancouver, private schools were authorized to be open. Portland, not. There were no schools in Portland, whether you paid for it or out of your own pocket or not, that you could send your kids to during the height of the COVID restrictions. Our daughter was living with us with 2 grandkids, and we found ourselves enrolling our grandkids in a private Christian school in Vancouver because my wife and I probably wouldn't have been able to get any work done at home if the kids were there all day. And we're not school teachers. Went to school all year and missed 1 week. A teacher tested positive for COVID. They closed the school for a week, cleaned the school up, retested everybody, and went back to school. As far as I'm concerned, this is the way it should be everywhere, even the public schools. Our kids need the socialization of other kids. It's crucial to their development. Next part of reason number 5, COVID restrictions. Let's talk about restaurants. We were able to go out to eat, sit down dining in Vancouver at our favorite restaurants when this was not possible in Portland. Business and restaurants were much more accessible during the peak of the stay-in-place orders in Vancouver versus Portland. Much more relaxed. And as a realtor, I had to keep track of the COVID restrictions in both Oregon and Washington as I am licensed in both states. And this was a moving target all the time. And so I spent a great deal of time making sure that I was following the restrictions in each state as I showed properties there. So moving forward with future COVID restrictions or some other kind of restriction, Washington, Vancouver has proven to be a less restrictive place to live. Number 4 on the list, Washington has no state income tax. Oregon has a 9.9% progressive income tax. And interestingly enough, Oregon adjusts its income tax rates every year. And the last time they adjusted them, they did not adjust the upper tiers, they only adjusted the lower tiers. So even if you're not a super high income earner, Oregon is going after people with income taxes even at the lower end of the income range. Number 3, property values are lower in Vancouver. With exception to the city of Camas, this has similar property values to West Lynn and Lake Oswego in Oregon. But the rest of Southwest Washington has lower property values for the same home compared to Portland. Number 2, people living in Vancouver comment about living in Vancouver versus Portland. When I'm showing homes in Vancouver with clients and neighbors are walking the sidewalks, etc., I typically engage them and say, how do you like living in this neighborhood? These are some recent quotes from the past few months. Number 1, there are a lot of people here moving to Vancouver from Portland. They are getting tired of Portland. We feel safe here. It's awesome that we are 10 to 15 minutes away from the Portland International Airport. We can access any of the Portland stuff when we want it without having to deal with living there. Go to the Blazer games, go to the Oregon Symphony, fine dining, but without living in Portland. Number 1, that brings us to number 1. Congratulations for hanging through the whole video. The Portland-Vancouver market is less costly. It is the least costly major city on the West Coast. Seattle almost double our median home price. The Bay Area and Los Angeles 3 to 4 times our median home price. So people moving here from other parts of the West Coast find the Portland and Vancouver area to be a bargain. I have tons of people moving here from the Bay Area and Los Angeles. In fact, I had 4 last month that I put into contract that were relocating and working remote jobs. A startling statistic, they say 55% of people who have been working remotely, if they were told they had to come back to the office, they say they would not do it. Working remotely is a lifestyle that they want to continue. Now, listening to the managers and the owners of businesses, this is not their opinion. So where this ultimately ends up, I don't know. But if employers can't find people to come into the office, I believe that we're going to see this remote working from home dynamic to continue. I know it's changed the way I work. I used to go into the office periodically. I don't go into the office at all anymore. I have adjusted to meet COVID restrictions to not have to go into the office by using Zoom and all sorts of communication platforms. And I don't see myself going back. I've made the adjustment and I'm going to stay here. And I think that that is the attitude of most people working from home. So I see this as a major ongoing trend. And the Pacific Northwest is a destination that many choose. And in the Pacific Northwest, in one of the major cities, Portland and Vancouver, is the least costly on the West Coast. And many of these people relocating are making really good salaries. And this translates to huge buying power in this market. Instead of making many sacrifices in the homes that they can afford in, say, the Bay Area, they are getting the home they want at a price that they can afford. The Portland-Vancouver market has not seen an influx of people like many of the other states that are now seeing home prices falling off. There are cities in Florida that had a 40% increase in value over the last year. The National Association of Realtors say the average home value in the United States went up 14.3% this year. So you compare 40% to 14, and Portland and Vancouver are right in that average range. For this reason, we should not see a market correction in the Portland-Vancouver market and home prices starting to go down. I am going to be doing a detailed video on 2022 and what to expect in the Portland-Vancouver market. The only factor I see happening in 2022 that we need to be aware of is that the Fed has announced they will be increasing interest rates, which means mortgage interest rates will be going up in 2022. So if there's a reason to move now, it would be to take advantage of the low interest rates before they start going up. And so yes, in many regards, Vancouver is the old Portland. I would suggest that you put Vancouver high on your list of places to relocate to. And I've made many videos on some of the communities in Southwest Washington, Camas, East Vancouver, etc. Or even going outside the content of this video, moving to one of the suburbs of Portland. They're awesome as well. Happy Valley, West Lynn, Lake Oswego, Beaverton, Hillsborough, Tigard, Wilsonville. These are all awesome communities in Oregon that are Portland suburbs. See my videos on these communities. I have videos on each one. And until the next video, I am waiting for your text or call. And Merry Christmas and blessings to you and yours.